Hello and welcome back, and that is right, today we're returning to the subject of TerraMaster and this, their latest release, the F4-425 Pro. Those that have followed the channel for a while now, we've got something of a soft spot for this brand, and you know, kind of where they are in the market right now between the likes of Synology and QNAP, and where they are against a number of new and emerging players that are biting at their heels, but they've got plenty of legacy behind them. And in this video, I'm going to give you 5 reasons why the TerraMaster F4-425 Pro may well be the NAS for you, but I'm also going to give you 5 reasons why you might want to sit on the fence a wee bit longer. TerraMaster's operating system, or TOS, currently available with this in TOS 7. I made a dedicated video about this a week or 2 ago, but I'll say right now, it is the best it has ever been. And I know lots of users are going to be comparing them against Synology DSM and QNAP QTS, more on that later in the video. I will say that TOS 7 pretty much has it all now. So hopefully you can see the footage there on screen. We have got support of, again, a network interface or accessing it remotely over the internet. On a file system level, it is still running on BTRFS, but alongside that, you've got write once, read many. You've got snapshots. You've got a multi-tier, multi-site backup tool built in now that's a great deal more user-friendly than ever. Isolation mode to sever the device from remote level access if you don't want it to be happening. Simple stuff like iSCSI, whether it is block level storage and, you know, shareable, easy, you know, limitless free storage, or you're using it to target VMs. But alongside that, you can run it in its own virtual machine hypervisor. There's also a surveillance application. Alongside that, a full network security scanner that allows you to secure the, you know, the nuts and bolts of your system when you need to. Multimedia applications, a native file explorer that's more like Windows File Explorer than ever. Alongside that, containerization of not only the first and third party applications, but alongside that, your own containers of choice with multiple repositories, AI tools, be it whether you're using the integrated AI photo recognition application there, or you're taking advantage of the native AI tools that are built in utilizing OpenClaw and specific TOS commands and skills baked into this. Those are optional, but if you want them, they are there with one-click true installation of a number of those services. Now, the good thing is, even if you're not convinced by any of that, and you know, who am I to tell you what to do, you can still use third-party operating systems like TrueNAS, Unraid and more without invalidating the hardware warranty. So again, you have got the flexibility and multiple doors of how you want to use your system. That processor, there's actually 2 different CPU options in the 425 Pro. There is the N305 8-core 8-thread i3 processor, but also the newer generation twin lake variation, the N350, a processor that I've not seen being used currently by any other brand. That is also an 8-core 8-thread processor that can be clocked up to 3.9 burst when needed with 1.35 GHz integrated graphics, but just a 7 watt TDP. And what that means in real terms is it's an efficient as all hell, but also very capable processor, whether it is you're assigning vCPUs and, you know, CPU cores to your virtual machines and containers, or just generally getting the job done. It is a CPU that's a little over a year old. I believe Twin Lake was launched in Q1 2025, and here we are just entering Q3 2026. So again, maybe a year and a half, depending on the month ratio. But again, given that there are a number of 4-bay desktop options in the market, and a lot of NAS brands have really taken their foot off the gas because of rising hard drive and SSD costs, I will say that is a great little CPU choice for this 4-bay. This next point is technically 2 points, one of which I've said on other videos, and that is that TerraMaster's 4-bay devices in the last couple of releases not only arrived with 4 SATA bays there on the front, but they also arrived with 3 M.2 bays inside there. The bootloader delivered via a USB inside there means that you're not losing any storage space to another drive inside there that would normally be used in another NAS, such as a little bit of bandwidth allocation towards an eMMC drive or a small M.2. This allows you to have 3 spare M.2 drives inside. Now, the reason I said this was one of 2 points is because alongside having that, when it comes to the M.2s inside the system, not only can you use them standard for cache or storage pools, or have them directly for key applications if you choose, but alongside that, they're one of the few brands that I know that take the arguably controversial step, in some cases, to allow you to use read and write caching with just one M.2 NVMe. Now, that does arrive with risk. One of the main reasons that most brands don't engage with having an M.2 on its own running read and write cache is if you have a drive error during write caching, that is when you're uploading data, it goes onto the SSD and then onto the larger storage pool, there is a window there that if the SSD fails, that you could lose that written data there. Now, that's why a lot of brands don't engage with that. Now, if you do choose to use one M.2 NVMe for write caching on this, not just read only, that does allow you, at the very least, to have that option if you're prepared to take the risk. But moreover, even if you do select that option, the TerraMaster system will warn you and will make sure you understand and are prepared to accept the risk if you do choose to use a single disk for a single NVMe for your write caching there. But again, the ability to use a single disk for read and write caching and still have two left over for storage pools and more, yum yum, but just be aware of the risks. Talking of things I've discussed before, but we've got to address it for new users in the room. One of the reasons a lot of people buy a Synology NAS is something called Synology Hybrid RAID, or SHR, the ability to mix and match different drive sizes in a single pool environment there, allowing you to, for example, get two drives in one capacity and a few years later add another drive and another drive, but not be capped in at the same size as those original drives. Flexible RAID pools allow you to use bigger drives and take advantage of larger capacity once you reach 4 drives or above. Now, the reason that's important is in the case of the TerraMaster systems, they also have a flexible RAID storage system in T-RAID. They're one of only 2 brands in the turnkey NAS market, Synology and them, that provide that option, even though they're not the oldest in the market. And it's kind of always perplexed me why some brands don't engage with this. Some have chosen other routes, such as QNAP going down the ZFS route, and brands like Synology that have abandoned ZFS as any kind of choice long term have stuck with BTRFS and then took advantage and grown within that. TerraMaster has very much taken that Synology route, and the ability to have the flexible RAID storage system on this, particularly if years down the line you end up upgrading from this 4-bay into say an 8 or 9-bay or even a rack mount system and carry your drives over and your whole array and configuration, flexible RAID storage systems can be very advantageous. That price tag. Originally, this was actually going to go on the 5 bad things pile, but the more I looked at that price tag of $799, the more I liked it more. Because yes, $799 for the N350 version of this for a 4-bay does seem high. However, when you look at the 8-core 8-thread CPU compared to other 4-bays in the market that only arrive with 4-core 4-thread, when you look at it arrives with 16 gig of SODIMM DDR5, when everyone else in the market is only providing either 4 or 8 gig, and a lot of the time as fixed LPDDR5 and therefore not being scalable needs to be acknowledged. But alongside that, the system arrives with 5 gig networking instead of 2.5 gig networking. So again, the majority of other 4-bay NAS market and 4-bay NAS desktop devices in the market right now have a tendency to arrive at around the $650 mark. This, on the other hand, at $799, yes, it's more expensive, but it is scaled up so many. And I haven't even mentioned those M.2s that I said earlier on in this price point. It just gives you more and ultimately gives you a better value. Yes, the price is higher, but the value is better there. And that's not even factoring in, if you go for the N305 version, the price is lower than that. And that's not even factoring in, and you can get a link in the description for this, that the launch of this device, they've knocked 20% off. So again, if you're looking for a 4-bay right now, use the link in the description. Again, we get a small commission. Me and Eddie here at NAS Compares, it's just us. But you can get it for even less than that. With that 20% discount, it is matching the price of what the other brands are providing in the market with significantly less hardware in the purchase. But nothing's perfect. So let's go through the 5 reasons why the F4-425 Pro might not be the NAS for you. We've got to return to that CPU there, because although I'm not going to slate it, as I say, I really like that processor, I've got to acknowledge it's not for everyone. And there are other 4-bay NAS devices in the market rocking CPUs that do give you more power. Yes, the price is scaled up accordingly, but if that N305 or N350 thing seems a little bit too efficient for you, do keep in mind that there are other 4-bays in the market that are rocking the i3 1215U. That's a 13th generation 6-core processor, 5-core 6-thread processor. Then there are other devices rocking out that i5 1235U 12th gen Alder Lake processor there. These are CPUs that are providing more cores, more power, and a higher graphical capability inside. But do keep in mind that you will lose that price value ratio that I just mentioned. So again, the CPU, I still love that in there, but there are more powerful ones in the market right now from other NAS vendors, including themselves as well in some of their other scaled up parts of the portfolio. And carrying on the subject of market options, as much as the praise I give to the 5GB network ports on this is true, I will say 5GB networking isn't for everyone. Bear in mind, having 5GB on this when there was bandwidth left on the table from that 9-lane processor is always a good thing. But 2 5GB network ports is not the same as a single 10GB port. Yes, you're getting failover. Yes, you can hit that performance number with things like link aggregation or SMB multi-channel, but there are going to be users out there that have looked at the marketplace right now, and if you scale back some of the stuff on this, like going down to 8GB in some places, scaling back on those M.2s, or just going solid M2 on its own, you can get hold of 10GB NAS options for that same price point there. So do keep that in mind, because 2 to 5GB ports here, again, even if you lag them together, I will say you're still going to be hitting a bottleneck on the rest of this storage. The M.2s inside this, by the way, are on Gen 3 times 1 speed, so they can all cap at a 10 gigabit anyway, which again, realistically at performance numbers, you're going to be looking at around 900 to maybe 930 megs cap tops. So again, even with SATA SSDs inside, whether you're using M.2s rated together, 10GB is going to be your limit there, and there are options in the market right now similarly priced with 10GB networking alongside a further 2.5GB port for good measure. I'm sorry to be such a broken record about this, and I've said it in other videos, but the point maintains, and until they do something about it, I'm going to keep saying it. The HDMI output on this thing does, in my opinion, F all. What do I mean by that? Yes, you can assign it to some apps and services, container virtualization, but as far as their anti-OS software goes, it really is just code line output. And yes, when you use third-party NAS operating systems, it's going to be useful during loading in and, installing it as a KVM appliance there. And again, you can use it for other things. But it's been years now of their systems having HDMI outputs. I think we must be getting close to a decade now. And in that time, they've never created a multimedia output that you can just use from the comfort of your sofa. They've never used it to port over some applications for things like Plex, and we'll come back round to that in a moment. Ultimately, I just wish they did more with the sodding HDMI output, and they shouldn't make such a noise about it on their official product pages when you can do so very little with it on their own OS. This next point I covered in my TOS 7 review, and I've mentioned it before. I don't like the TerraMaster community site place thing. Once you log into this device and get out for the first time, the application center, there are loads of first-party applications, well maintained with regular updates as well. But when you look on the left-hand side of the apps page, you see something there called community. And in the community page there, it loads up on a web browser to another site, which has third-party community-built apps. And the wording on the page, I don't know if it's one guy that's doing all of it, if it's a team of people, where the blurry line is between TerraMaster themselves or third-party devs that they're working with there. It also has a weird subscription model where you can get for free 5 apps a month, or you can support them by getting more, and then it layers in actual support if you pay. It's just murky. I'm not saying devs shouldn't get paid. I'm saying there's a real difficulty in the blurred line between first-party apps and third-party apps. And if you're running this system and you're worried about third-party apps and slightly non-official, non-certified applications, they need to draw the line clearer, or at the very least, have it so that users can choose to go to that repository and enter that repository's link into the App Center in the way they've done before and other NAS brands do. Having it there straight out the gate is just something I'm not really in love with. All of the nice things I said about TOS 7 do not erase the fact that once you compare TOS 7 against Synology DSM and QNAP QTS or QUTS, there is still ground to be made up, unfortunately. TOS 7 is good, and I would argue TerraMaster have done a banging job in scaling up TOS in their latest version. But outside of that desktop browser experience, the client application side of things still feels like there's work to be done. The Preem TNAS application, that's had loads done. The integration with the TerraSync operation there, setting up network SMB shares, bridging stuff, controlling the device outside of the web browser with that app is really, really good. Once you get outside of that, they've got a singular mobile application for iOS and Android. There isn't tailored applications. There isn't a lot of the client applications for individual apps. Yes, they're merging them all into the TNAS app, which is all right, but some people don't want to have a singular app that controls everything. They want to have tailored applications and services for different things. And I know that means they'd have to spread their dev. They'd have to spread a lot of the workload that can be problematic. And I don't know the true size of the TerraMaster NAS brand. But still, I do think there is work to be done between TerraMaster and their other leading competitors at Synology and QNAP to close the gap. And definitely the client applications, mixed Mac and Android and Windows support and different layers of updates for different apps and services, that needs reviewing there. TOS 7's great, but it's all the surrounding stuff around it that I now think they need to really refocus upon. But there you go. That is the TerraMaster F4-425 Pro. As mentioned earlier in the video, it's launching, I think, now. And again, the N350 model is $799, and they've got a 20% discount. They've also got a promo code they gave us from a previous video, so I'm going to put all that down there in the description below, and you can purchase it from Amazon or their own website. It is a nice little solid box, and we will be doing some comparison videos on this against other options in the market very, very soon. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.